All right, here we are. Hello, and welcome to the June 2022 reading of the 31st season of the New York Review of Science Fiction reading series, which is always such a mouthful that it takes a while for me to say it. I am your host for this evening, Amy Goldschlager, a book reviewer and general pain in the ass. And I'm delighted to be here for a reading and a Q&A with A.T. Greenblatt. This is going to be an all New York reading this evening, which is super awesome. Actually, next month will also be an all New York reading, because in July we will have Karen Hewler, whose book, The Splendid City, releases next Tuesday I think it's next Tuesday, next week anyhow, from Angry Robot. So make sure you've got all of your pre-orders in, because I've heard bits of it and Karen's fantastic. She's a great friend of the series, and I'm looking forward to that. August and September, we have the August TBA reading. As per usual, we will keep you posted. Before I introduce A.T. Greenblatt, I just want to remind you all that this reading, although provided to you for free, is not free in cost. It costs money both to use the Be Live software and to broadcast this and to host the channel. So if you would like to send a tip to paypal.com/pay, PALME/OurWolf, that would be very, very, very helpful to help keep these series going. We will continue to be virtual for the near future for health and safety reasons, and also for the simple fact that right now we don't currently have a physical location. If the global situation changes on all levels, we will let you know about that. I think that is probably all of the housekeeping that I need to do, except to mention that, of course, I hope you're all contributing to the chat. And apparently, there is a new wrinkle here that if you want those of us here in the control to associate your name with the comments, uh, please post this once at some point /group-comments, just as it is in the crawl below. And incidentally, did I forget to mention that Jim Freund is the producer of the series, and that the audience wrangler for this evening is the always fabulous Barbara Krasnoff? Well, if I forgot, well, now I remembered. Anyway, on to the person who you actually want to listen to. A.T. Greenblatt is a Nebula Award-winning writer and mechanical engineer. She lives in New York City, where she's known to frequently subject her friends to various cooking and home brewing experiments. Wow, that's exciting. Her work has been nominated for a Hugo, Locus, and Sturgeon Award, has been in multiple years' best anthologies, and has appeared in Tor.com, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Lightspeed, and Clark's World, as well as other fine publications. You can find her online at http://atgreenblatt.com, and on Twitter at Greenblatt. That's kind of fun, actually. And here we go. A.T. Greenblatt, welcome to the reading.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
So what are you going to read for us this evening?
So I'm actually kind of excited because I am a short story writer, and which means most of my stories appear online and only really kind of appear in print if I get a reprint. But I actually have a story in an anthology. Holding it up for those who might be listening to it. It's called A Bridge to Elsewhere. It's edited by Julie Rios and Elena Jolie Abbott. And it's a anthology all about spaceships and the space cruise. Did I say it right? Yeah, I did. it's apologies because it's been a long day and I've been on Zoom a lot. So I might mangle words a little bit, but that's okay. But yeah, so this is a story I wrote for this particular anthology, and yeah, I'm pretty excited.
All right. On with the show.
All right. Sounds good. So this is called um, The Music of a New Path, and it is told from the perspective of each of the crew members. So it starts off with Tessa. Tessa. Tessa's crew was making music again in the deepest part of space, like a heartbeat, like a lifeline, anything to survive in the endless gaping void between stars. She was chewing gum on the half beat of the crew song. Iona tapping her foot as she tinkered in the engine coils. Caitlin's clear whistle, winding and floating as she bustled around the mess. Nima humming counter melody to Caitlin's tune as they wrangled the livestock in the cargo hold. And below it all was the Cagwin castaways' base, droning and whirling and shifting as it held them through the emptiness to the next colony. There's always another colony, Tessa thought, and it gave her a bit of hope. The crew's song thrummed in her ears as she drifted around the command center, display screen in hand, debating where to go next. Surrounding her, the bay windows showed a bright blue atmosphere with cloud wisp, making her feel like she was floating in some colony sky. It was alive, of course, but Tessa didn't care. She was a deep sailor, but that didn't mean she had to stare into empty space. Clack, clack, clack went her teeth as she worried, keeping half an eye on the readings. The castaway fed her about the exterior of the ship, half an eye on the readings about its organic and inorganic parts, and half an eye on the colony's requests coming through. Over and over she plotted out potential courses, using known routes through the mind-bending twists of space-time, only to be disappointed in her options. They reached the destination. They would reach the destination in 3 days. She put off this decision for too long. Here are the choices, crew. We run to Beta Station next, Tessa said, keeping the frustration out of her voice. She wished they had the supplies and the resources to make longer treks to try new routes. I hate that place, Iona grumbled over the phone. Same, said Nima. They pay well enough, Tessa argued, but half-heartedly. They're desperate. That's because half their population harasses deep sailors, countered Helen with a snort. Not worth the money. Never thought I'd hear you say that, Iona teased. Me neither, replied Caitlin with a laugh. But we're not that pathetic. Yet. Well, the other options lie on the 8, Tessa said. The entire crew groaned, and Tessa could swear the castaway's pitch got lowered too. Tessa rolled her eyes, but inwardly she was pleased. They had come a long way since she found the castaway and her crew in that ship's graveyard. At least, they had the luxury of making choices now. Beta station it is then, she said. She pulled out the client contract. Contract refused, flashed on her screen. Tessa froze. The castaway rarely cared where they went. Okay, smartass, Tessa told the ship. Where should we go then? The castaway didn't respond. Droning went its engines. Tessa ground her teeth into her chewing gum. She and her deep-sailing ship never had that kind of chirpy, warm relationship that some captains boast of having with their ship's consciousness. In fact, the castaway never spoke at all, which was fine by Tessa. Theirs was a business arrangement, a deal to keep each other fed and free and in working order. They found each other at the lowest points. A long-limbed deep sailor struggling to make ends meet in the higher deep habitats, and an old deep-sailing ship long past its prime. Cagwin's castaway had always been a silent, moody ship, but this felt different. The ship had grown, well, distance, sometimes lagging a little in the crew song. Where should we go, ship? He asked again. There was a pause in the crew's melody, That dragged on for 1 second, 2, 3. Everyone was listening, waiting for an answer. A new route lit up on Tessa's screen, and before she could fully understand it or protest, the castaway's tune changed. Its humming engines became a roar as it shifted course. For a heart-pounding minute, the gravity increased, nearly throwing Tessa across the cabin, followed by a chorus of swears from the rest of the crew. "Shit!" Iona said when it was over. "What happened?" "Don't know," replied Tessa, righting herself and studying the screen. On the display, the castaway shared its new course. "Calculating route," it said. But the route it charted led to nothing but empty space. This is it. The ship finally broke, Tessa thought, alarmed. "I'm going to override it," she said. They didn't have the time or the resources to get stranded, and there was a few other deep-sailing ships in range that could help, but not for too much longer. Cass wouldn't just change course of that consulting us, Iona protested. "It just did," Neva pointed out, worry seeping into her voice. "Doesn't overriding kill the ship's AI?" Caitlin said. "Only if it resists," Tessa replied. But inwardly she was worried. Would it resist? "It must have its reasons," Iona insisted. Tessa rubbed her face. Click, click went her teeth. But now the only accompaniment was the ship's deep hum. The junkyard man had warned her that she was on borrowed time with the Kagwin's castaway when she bought it. But there was something that Tessa couldn't quite name, that whispered, "Don't give up on the ship. Not yet." "We have 2 hours before we're out of range of help," Tessa said. "Let's figure out what the ship is thinking." Iona, really, if you want to know what a deep-sailing ship was thinking, you shouldn't look at the displays. Bend the twist of its engines. That's Iona's advice. "Cass, baby, what are you doing?" she whispered, as she pushed off the nearest enter coil, drifting through the maze of chrome piping. The crew was worried. She could hear it in the way Tessa chewed her gum, the way Caitlin drummed her fingers, the way Nima had gone silent. Everyone was busy wondering, had the castaway finally given up the ghost? "It's an old ship. It's only a matter of time," the junkyard man told them as they accepted their credit. "I don't believe it," she said to herself as she propelled from coil to coil. "You better believe it. It's happening," said Caitlin over the comm. "That's not what I mean," Iona mumbled. "You think it's some sort of engine problem?" asked Tessa. "Looking into it, boss." Around her, the ship's engine unspooled and bunched up again, like silver threads. Iona could spend hours here, did spend hours here, losing herself in a maze of piping and data meters. Her small frame and long limbs checked into spaces that no colony-born engineer could, with their gravity-thick bodies. Sure, the castaway was past its prime. Sure, it needed a little bit of extra love. Iona didn't mind. She imagined floating among the coils of the ship was like floating among the twists and bends of space-time, that the cast navigated through with ease. The engine. The engine would tell you everything you need to know. So Iona didn't bother looking at the ship's displays. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. Beneath Tessa's tense bites and Caitlin's nervous tapping and Nima's barely audible hum, he heard something slightly off. A high, sputtering whine clashed with the castaway's functioning purr. Hope, or maybe fear, jumped up inside her. Following the sound is how she found the castaway in the first place. In that graveyard all those years ago. Following her ears, Iona found her way deeper into the engine. Well, what really happened was Iona was between jobs, between crews, again, when she found herself in this janky spaceport, doubling as a junkyard. It was full of skeletons of ancient ships and organic transport runners, and Iona was busy floating between these dead ships, feeling sorry for herself, again. The passenger ship she had worked on had upgraded its environmentals to 1G. Her deep-sailing body couldn't handle anything more than 5G for more than a few hours. Sorry, 0.5G for more than a few hours. So there she was, unemployed, drifting, until she stumbled upon the castaway. The weird whine got louder the deeper Iona went into the engine. The deeper she went, the less room there was, and the more complex the systems became. Iona didn't mind. She loved being here, in the center of the ship. The ship gone through the freaky tangles of deep space, and Iona kept the ship running. A soft, spurring whine caught her attention. In the graveyard, curious, she followed the source. Holy shit, you still have juice left, Iona said when she realized it was a ship making a noise. How do you know? Another deep cell asked from behind her. Iona bent and squeezed herself between the coils as the area constricted even more. She reached out with her long arms to check the fittings and the casings she replaced. Patchwork jobs until they can get to a colony that had proper materials. That's a promise that day was coming soon. Any updates from the cast? She asked. Still says calculating route, Tessa replied. You? Not yet, but I think the problem's here, Iona replied. How do you know? The deep sailor repeated, this time from beside her, as the two of them studied the castaway in the junkyard. Sure, they met briefly the previous night in one of the few low-gravity establishments left on the spaceport. Iona was too stunned to find this long-limbed sorry. Iona was too stunned to find this long-limbed woman beside her in the middle of the ship's graveyard. Hear that? Iona replied. That's the sound the ship makes when it's asking for help. Stuttering. The stuttering whine was getting louder, and the coils around her warmer. Iona pushed herself forward into the heart of the engine. 5 years ago, when she became the cast engineer, she repaired hundreds of corroded and destroyed casings, crumbling gaskets, and failed pipes. She was still doing that, and loving it. But she couldn't quite shake the feeling that there was something she missed. It's too big for me to handle by myself, Iona said, in the graveyard with a sigh. With a small crew? Tessa asked. Yeah, a crew. I don't have one. Not anymore. I have one, Tessa replied. You need an ender person, though. Iona, clock's running, Tessa said. We have an hour and a half left before we're out of range of help. I'm close, Iona told her crew. But she wasn't sure they could hear her over the noise. She placed her hands on the coils, and then jerked them back with a yelp. They were hot. Too hot. She found the problem, and it was in the heart of the engine, the place that she had so carefully repaired and tended all those years ago. Now it was leaking and breaking and struggling, and she missed all the signs. Shit. Oh shit. Cast. What am I doing on time? What do you think I'll do in that section? Okay. Caitlin. Caitlin didn't like to flaunt this, but sometimes she caught things the rest of her crew overlooked. She hoped that this was one of those times. She listened to their chatter with growing dread. I'm sorry, Iona kept saying. I don't know how I missed this. The cast usually tells me when something's wrong. Can he fix it? Tessa asked, too cool and practical, even when she was worried. Why wouldn't the ship tell you sooner? Caitlin asked quietly. Iona ignored the question. Patching it now. Should be enough to get us up to the next colony, which is the closest deep-sailing ship. Joining you in the engine, Tessa said. Me too, Nima said. For once, Caitlin wished she had the body of a deep sailor, but she didn't. She was born and raised in 1G, so all she was good for was waiting in the lush green mess hall while the others patched up the engine. No one was talking over the comm. There was only the soft sound of breathing and the occasional swear from Tessa and Iona. Don't check the display every 5 seconds, Caitlin thought to herself. She checked every 10. Calculating route, calculating route, calculating route, was all the castaway said. So Caitlin paced. All around her in the mess All around her in the mess was the ship's organic parts, the living pieces of the Kagwan's castaway, the plants and fungi that worked in a symbiotic relationship to transform carbon into fuel for the ship, and acted as a food source for the crew. It was also the only part of the ship with 0.8 g gravity, and for Caitlin, that was perfect. Okay, done, Iona announced finally. Here we go. Caitlin braced for the gravity shift of the ship's impending maneuvers. They always angered her unhappy joints. It didn't come. Why isn't the castaway changing course? She asked. Silence from the crew, except for the deep groan of the ship. I don't know. Through the calm, Iona sounded close to tears. We have an hour left, Tessa said, and this time there was no such stress in her voice. This ship is going to be the death of me, Caitlin thought. Listen, she said, I think the problem is much more serious than the engine. Are you saying we should override? Tessa asked, and Caitlin swore she could hear a slight tremble on the captain's voice. Not quite yet, Caitlin replied. It wasn't that Caitlin thought the castaway was completely broken. She didn't. But she's been noticing for a while that something was troubling it. The ship's sound was slightly off. The plants weren't growing quite right. Hurry, Nemo whispered. The mess itself wasn't large, but it was dense, with folds and layers of foliage and plants growing on every surface. When Caitlin wasn't cooking, she was cataloging and monitoring what was growing, carefully observing every millimeter of this complex living space. And she would still come across surprised volunteer seedlings. Running her fingers through her hair, Caitlin rolled back her shoulders and began to search for what the castaway was trying to tell her. The ship didn't talk to her, not directly at least. But they had developed their own language over the years. Sometimes, if Caitlin got particularly sarcastic, the lemon tree would mysteriously knock out words for that day. Or if they spent longer than needed in some bigger spaceport, the mangoes and potatoes would grow swollen and misshapen. Caitlin began inspecting every leaf and germinating crop. It was slow, working through the twisting rows of plant life, potting overhanging trellises and folds of organic ship, looking for anything out of place. The only sounds now were the water misters and the leaves fluttering in the draft. Damn it! I did too good of a job here, she thought, frustrated by the density of the garden. But she was also a little proud. We managed to grow so much food here, Pete. I don't know what to say sometimes. Maybe we don't even have to go to those stupid colonies for food. Nemo would smile into her mirror and Tess would look thoughtful, as if calculating if that was possible. Sometimes Caitlin wanted to strangle her crewmates and say, do you know what it feels like to be stranded? Instead, she usually replied with a funny, sarcastic remark. Her crew knew that she spent the first 20 years of her life on a colony that was more water than mud, more enthusiasm than sense. But they didn't know how desperate the colony was until it became part of their trade route. She remembered when the first deep-sailing vessels had showed up, bringing fresh varieties of plants and animals, raw materials, and replacement parts. It had been nothing short of miraculous. When it landed and unloaded, her grandfather had placed his hands on the ship and wept, and, until he seen the deep sailors themselves. With their small torsos and large hands, thin necks and long limbs, lungs heaving in the high gravity, the grandfather had recoiled, but Caitlin hadn't. "Thank you for coming," she said to the nearest one. He had given her a warm smile. "Oh, don't thank us," he said, and patted the side of the ship. After half an hour of searching, Caitlin could find no messages from the castaway in her plans. "Listen," she told the ship, "I want to know what's really going on." "Calculating route," read her display. Cursing, frustrated, angry, and scared, Caitlin wrapped her hand around the nearest soy plant and uprooted it. "Oh," she breathed. "What?" said Tessa. "I think I found my answer," she said. "Hang on." Caitlin liked to believe it was the small kindnesses to deep sail that saved her. That that when her joints became too painful in 1G, they'd taken her on as a passenger from the colony out of friendship, not pity. When she met her crew on that backwater spaceport doubling as a junkyard, it was her cooking that convinced Tessa to hire her, not because she mentioned her body was agony in 1G2. "Do you know how to grow food?" Tessa had asked. "I was born in a colony," Caitlin replied. And when Tessa gave her a blank look, she added, "Of course." She hadn't known what to expect from the castaway when she first came on board, but slowly the mess began to bloom and thrive, and Caitlin fell in love with the ship-fed garden. As she began to grow food on this strange, silent, deep-sailing ship that could navigate through the bends and folds of space-time, but never said a word. Now, Caitlin began pulling up some of the plants, only a few, and as gently as she could. The tomato stalk, a tomato stalk here, a cassava plant there. But as she uprooted, she discovered a pattern. All the roots were growing in the wrong direction. "They're all growing up," she said, stunned. "All the roots. The cast is rerouting everything." "What does it mean?" Tessa asked. "I don't know," Caitlin replied. Iona swore. "Calculating route," said the display. I think I think we have to override the ship's path," Caitlin said, knowing she was asking for a death sentence for a ship's AI, and it broke her heart. Tagwin's castaway was her friend, her home. She heard Tessa grunt in agreement. "Wait," Nima said. "Let me try one last thing, and I'll end there. And if you would like to read the rest of the story, the books are being sold. I'm not sure where, but I'll tweet it."
At your favorite, online distribution or perhaps your local bookstore kind of thing?
Probably, yeah. Uh, I think it's they're shipping out books from the Kickstarter now.
Oh, it's a Kickstarter, okay,
It
well, then
was, yeah.
after that, then there's usually people can usually buy after, and a lot of time they tend to go to Indiegogo for people who wanna get, say.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, there we go, I'm back again. So it's interesting because in preparation for this, I was reading your story in, Lightspeed. Oh, and Barbara just said that Amazon says it's on sale on July 5th, so you
There
can
we go.
get it through them, or again, ideally, if we can go through, I don't know, was it bookshop dot org.com? To support independent bookstores if we can.
Yeah, and I think the publisher Outlander Press will probably, did I get that right? Outland Press.
you know,
we'll
I
also have books.
well, whatever you can get it is
Yes.
good, of course, because 'cause you've gotta support authors and their works, and a lot of, my friends are on there clearly. Anyway, to get back to the question I was gonna ask you. So in preparation, I was reading your Lightspeed story, which is called let's see, I just looked this up again, so I had it right? And of course, it's not loading. Oh, the memory of a memory is a spirit. And I thought it was kind of interesting when I was listening to you read from this story because I saw some commonalities, in the sense of there was of course about travel and sort of feeling restless and a need to move, and also the idea of a found family and how important that is to kind of find your place among people or whatever in the case of the Lightspeed story, or actually in the case of this story, to care. And I wondered where your inspiration for those things come, and if those are sort of common themes for you.
I guess so. I mean, I love to travel, and I'm always the type of person that's moving around. So I think I like my character also be moving around. It keeps the natural momentum, and I always like them to try to be finding their places, and partially because I like to have fun, weird settings, and it's a great way to do that while um, developing characters. And yeah, so not really one point of inspiration, but just themes I like to play with in my stories.
Do you have a preference for writing fantasy or over science fiction, or is it all the same to you, really?
I kind of don't pay attention to genre really when I'm writing stories. Sometimes I usually will switch it up from what I wrote last. So if I wrote like a science fiction story, I'll try to do something more fantastical or horror related or something. Just because I get bored easily.
Keep you fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you also have a fairly intellectually demanding job, I guess, through being a mechanical engineer. I know we were talking about that the other month about what it is that you do. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that feeds into your work, if it does at all?
Yeah, I mean, so I just recently moved to New York for a new job at a vertical farming company, which has been very cool. It's ironically, I was reading the story again. I was like, some of the stuff that like the Caitlin was stressing out about is stuff that like the ag scientists kind of stress out about. And, so it's basically a company that is growing vegetables indoors in warehouses as a kind of attempt to make a more sustainable agriculture industry. So it's been pretty cool. I usually keep the two separate, though. I'm finding my ability to tell stories has been helpful in this new job, and the things I'm learning about how like just complex biology is in a way I don't think I fully appreciate when I was an engineer just doing um, like computer design work. Uh, it's probably going to seep its way back into my writing in the future.
So then it goes both ways. That's kind of neat, actually. I
Yeah,
like that. I mean, I'm constantly trying to grow salad in my apartment, and I was shocked to keep discovering over and over again that even if you grow salad indoors, it will still bolt. I find that endlessly frustrating. It's like,
yeah,
there's no sun, stop flowering at me. But
yeah.
and yet it does. But anyhow, I mean, I was actually also thinking, there was a Doctor Who, Christmas special a couple of years ago where they were pretending it was vertical farms in a building in London, and then it was full of Daleks instead. But, hopefully, there aren't killer machines where you're trying to grow vertical farms.
Nope. Uh, no kill machines. Just over ego bumblebees sometimes. So
Yes. And, so, I mean, I guess you already had an organic interest because, of course, your bio says you're interested in home brewing, which is something that fascinates me, frankly. So I guess craft is always there in what you do.
Yeah, I really like making things, no matter what it is. I got into homebrewing because a friend of mine was moving to Dublin, and he had all the equipment. He's like, "Well, I'm not bringing this to Dublin with me, so you can have it as long as you promise to use it." And at the time, I was living in a small apartment, and I couldn't physically lift like 5 gallon glass carboy full of liquids, so I brought it over to my parents. And my dad's a chemist by training, and I convinced them to help me try to do this. And yeah, we've been just having a lot of fun doing it over the years. I think we've done like 30 some batches.
God, I'm so
Yeah,
jealous. Because honestly, to me, like, the mechanics of it all and the just sort of, different kinds of things that you have to do, I've always found really overwhelming when I thought about doing it because there's so many, parameters to set and be careful with, it seems to
yeah.
me.
It's not too bad once you've done it a few times, but there's always an element of like, well, I hope this works. I don't know what it's gonna turn out to be, and that's actually kind of the fun of it because you put this thing together, you put a lot of time and effort, and you just have to wait sometimes to see how it turns out. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, here's a question I suspect somebody must have asked you at some point, but it was interesting me, which was that I saw that you use your initials because there was an Elisa Greenblatt who was a Yiddish poet who died in 1975, and you didn't want to have a confusion. And what's it like to sort of have a sort of writer doppelganger? And have you looked at her work and what does that feel like?
Yeah, I have. She was a poet, and I've only read translations of her work, and it's lovely. I mean, it was a little bit intimidating when I first started writing because she was not like she was known, and she's actually Woody Guthrie's mother-in-law, so
Yeah,
grandmother-in-law.
I found that too. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
so occasionally her name pops up, and it's a little bit strange, but it's also kind of cool.
Maybe
And
she's a distant relation, you don't know.
maybe, yeah, maybe. So it's kind of cool. And I also like picked the initials because I thought it was cool when I was in my 20s. And I wanted to create a little bit of separation between the engineer persona and the writer persona.
Yeah, I
So,
think that can be useful for people. And, let's see, have a question from Barbara Krasnoff, our handy audience wrangler. She said, "How did you come to be included in the anthology?"
uh, so I was reached out by Julie Rios, who is a wonderful editor. I really like working with them a lot. I said, "Hey, I'm doing this anthology about cruising the spaceships. Would you like to do something?" And of course, I said yes. So this was, a little over a year ago, and I that was the only prompt I got. So I kind of thought of that for a while, and I've been fascinated by tr- uh, trying to tell a story that changed with every perspective. Um, that every character offered a little bit more. It was like a puzzle mystery to solve. So that's what I was aiming for with this one.
So then
You,
you do not usually write, from different perspectives like that? Do you usually like to stick to one, or what's your
I've been for a long time. I only did one. Lately, I've been experimenting with more, um, and trying to really nail down different voices for different characters. Sometimes more successfully than others, but yeah, it's been one of the things I've been trying to do more.
Does it feel like a different process if you're writing in response to a prompt as opposed to something that sort of inspires you just all by yourself in your in life, or
No, not really, because every story I write is a combination of 5 different ideas. So just provide one, which is sometimes easier, especially if like the idea doesn't really click with anything. I sometimes get my most interesting stories by prompts I wouldn't have picked for myself. Um, so uh, not really. It kind of goes through the same process of me not knowing what to do and slowly fitting pieces together. Um,
I don't know, it sounds like it's the same process as brewing in a certain kind of way or cooking because you
I
get
don't know.
these
I think
elements.
brewing comes with instructions, and then you just wait and see what happens. Versus stories, which you're creating the instruction manual while you're trying to figure out what the final result is.
But I mean, presumably sometimes when you cook, you're like, "Okay, what's in the kitchen and what can I do with it really?"
Yeah, there's something for me at least much more stressful about figuring out a story than cooking. Maybe because this audience.
And look, Barbara asked the question that I was going to ask, which is good because psychic abilities are awesome. Are there any writers who you are influenced by, or who you especially admire?
Yeah, I am such a fan of Kelly Link's work. I really love the way she tells stories and the weird structures and the way they twist and turn. I really love N.K. Jemisin. Her stories a lot too. Um, I of course blank out on every name. Sam Pinchuk is a really good friend, but also a writer I really admire. Who else? Come back to me. I'll think of like
Well,
five.
I think those are interesting choices because I know that Sarah Pinsker also, writes some of her novels from different perspectives like that, and I know that, N.K. Jemisin pretty much experiments with story structure and how things are told. She likes second person, which I know some people are funny about, but personally, I actually really like. I'm very
I
pro.
really like it too. Yeah, I think one person is great. I actually just did a panel at the Nebulas a couple weekends ago on the second person with some really good panelists. So if any of you have memberships to the Nebula conference, you can actually watch that panel again because they keep it up for a year.
Oh, cool. Yeah, for some reason missed some email where they asked about my availability or something, so then I couldn't be on a panel, but, I heard that it was, well, it had some controversy, but that there was some really
Yeah,
good
the
panels.
the, the panels I saw on was uh, were really insightful, and it's always a lot of fun for me at least to hear other people geek about geek out about stories and very specific details about stories. And sometimes unlocks things when you're working.
So, you've liked the chance to talk to other writers and get the juices going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what kinds of things are you working on now, if you can say, or what sort
Oh
of
boy.
plans do you think?
Yeah. So I actually just got over a streak of not writing much. Like I got to New York after having some crazy deadlines leading up to my move, writing deadlines, and just could not write for like a good 2 3 months. But I just finished a first draft of a short story that I actually got critiqued last night, so I have ideas of what to do. So I'm working on that, and I also just opened up a novella that I've been tinkering on for years, and I'm hoping this is summer I actually get that sucker done. So I'm tired of thinking about it. So that's my that's my two big projects right now.
Does it feel different to work on something in long form as opposed to something that's in short form?
Yeah, it's a lot more terrifying. I was editing it the other day, and I realized I wrote chapter one, chapter two, and I'm like, holy crap, I've never done that before. That's terrifying. Uh, yeah, so but I think it's gonna be one of those things that like the story needs to be that one, so it'll work out hopefully.
Would you ever think about doing a novel, or do you?
Yeah, I'm working my way up to that. The, I'm trying to learn how to grow stories and tell more complicated things, and I'm doing that by slowly growing my word count up with things. So I am very comfortably writing in the novelette now with um, ideas. I'm like, wait, I could tell more story than this, which typically with short stories, I was like, no, I'm done here. And now I'm like, wait, I can come back to this idea or this world.
Well, that's cool. So then it kind of almost starts as a sort of like internal story collection, which develops into a longer piece in a way.
We'll see. I mean, that'd be cool. I have a friend who wrote a flash story that turned into a novel. So I guess anything's possible.
Because I mean, I don't know, that also just kind of feels like an engineering thing because it feels like modular. I just kind of find that sort of appealing in a way. Um, And let's see, and then there's another question from Barbara, who is essentially acting as my co-interviewer, which is great. Thank you,
Yeah,
Barbara.
thank you for fielding the questions.
She asks, some writers found that the isolation of the pandemic made it harder to write. Some found it easier. Were you at all affected either way?
um, I wrote a lot during the pandemic. I think it was a panic response uh, to the world news and kind of like just trying to keep myself occupied and productive to not feel despair. Um, so I wouldn't say it wasn't affected, but I don't know. It was not easy to write during that time, though. I managed to do quite a bit. Um, I also did my God. It feels like a blur, but I was like, oh yeah, it'd be my first like client work during the pandemic, which was a lot of fun and a lot of work. And yeah, oh yeah, I wrote like 25,000 words for that.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
You're an
so
inspiration to us all, to be honest.
yeah. Well, a deadline and an outline help a lot with that. Um, but I also, it was interesting. What did change for me was I read so much. Like between reading and audiobooks, I was reading 10 books a month, which is very different from a lot of my friends who couldn't read at all. But reading for me was always been a form of escapism, and I just leaned into it hard
I
during
admire your focus because honestly, I mean, I know like audiobooks require a sort of different level of focus. And at least for me, I know that once I stopped commuting, it was a little bit hard for me to really listen to audiobooks because they take up so much more time.
Yeah, well, I was listening to them when I was walking my dog and like just cooking and stuff like that. So it was I really liked it for that. I actually haven't really listened to audiobooks since I moved to New York, which is interesting. But I don't quite have the focus for that
Yeah,
anymore.
it is an interesting kind of thing to do. I mean, I review them, so I have to listen to them
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
But I admire that. And Barbara also wants to know what kind of dog you have.
She's a black lab mix, uh, just made of pure energy. Yeah, her favorite thing in the world is to fetch a frisbee, and she will make sure I get up and out at least 3 4 times a day.
Well, that's it's good. You have a trainer in the house.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
But I mean, if you're gonna have a dog that's got retriever in there, then I think you're gonna have to kinda deal with what that leads to.
Yep. Yep.
So, what question when you're being interviewed do you always wish somebody would ask you and they never have?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I I feel like a lot of people always ask, um, "Do you get to sell it?" Like, I think what people don't ask is, how do you keep going? And I think my answer to that is finding a good community. Because I've said this before, but nothing is created alone, and just finding people who kind of cheer you on when you don't think things are working out is really important. So, uh, yeah.
Well, I think, I mean, at least
Mm.
by moving to, I mean, I'm not saying you didn't have that in Philly because I know there's a great writers community in Philly,
There's a
but
great writers community in Philly, and yeah, actually, I still talk to them via Zoom.
we also have a pretty good, writers community here in New
We
York,
do have a great writers community here. Still,
and there's also a Brooklyn, specific one,
yeah, yeah, the Brooklyn
yeah,
Speculative Fiction.
speculative fiction, yeah,
Yeah,
so I think, if you want to, you can really hook into a good community here, and, of course, thanks to the glory of the internet, you can be, connected to a writers community anytime you want.
yeah, I definitely want to hang out with more writers here. Yeah,
Well,
I really like writers and creative people in general. So.
yeah, I kinda like them myself. Anyway, let's see, so Jim just put the crawl at the bottom, reminding everyone that this reading series is not free, so, please do leave a tip on his PayPal, which helps to, support us all, and keep the series going. We will stay virtual for the near future, but, I'm hoping, we have to hope that things will get better enough so that we feel safe to have some in-person readings because I know some people are venturing out, but it also helps to have an outside space. And okay, and he has also posted the Amazon link to Bridge to Elsewhere. So, of course, we encourage you to go out and buy the book and help support writers because if you buy it, then Elisa can keep writing because
Yeah,
that's what gets justification. If lots of people buy it,
well, and it
lots of
helps a
people
lot
will
of
buy
new
her
writers.
stories.
Yeah, it helps a lot of new writers too, and also there's a lot of really amazing people in this anthology.
Several people who have actually read here at the series, including, let's see, Malka Olders read for us, and Carlos Hernandez has, and Claire Cooney has, and S.L. Huang has, and gosh, I really want her to read for us again, because she's a stunt woman and also has lots of exciting things to say.
Yeah,
But this has been really, really wonderful, Elisa, and I'm glad that you have joined our NYRSF found family and read for us. And
this was so much fun. I'm so glad to uh, be on here and hang out with you all.
And I want to thank everybody who has tuned into the reading and everybody who listens to this recording in the future, either on the Facebook feed or the YouTube feed. And please come back, listen to the other feeds, and then tune in July when we've got Karen Hewler. And also, you should buy her book, The Splendid City, because I also support her a lot. And thank you again to Jim Freund, who is the producer and tonight the engineer of this series and keeps it going. And also our audience wrangler, Barbara Krasnoff, who also keeps this series going. And then there is me, who I like to think of as either the unofficial or the official dog's body of the series, which means I do whatever is required of me depending on the moment. And that's pretty much it, I think.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your hard work. I really appreciate it, and thank you to the audience. We can't see you here, but hopefully, you are having a wonderful evening. And thanks so much for coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
have a great night, and we will see you next month.